Hello. So I have just got back from watching 28 Years Later. Straight out of the gate, I'm just letting everybody know this is a spoiler review. I'm going to be talking about the details of the film, everything that happens. So if you haven't seen the film yet, please click off this video, go watch the film and come back afterwards. Good, great. I'm going to assume you're gone and let's talk about the film. So what did I think of it? I really enjoyed this film. By the way, for those unfamiliar, I have seen and made a video on the first film, 28 Days Later. At the time of release of this video, 28 weeks later, the second film isn't on my channel yet. It will be coming out, I think maybe the day after this, but it will be coming very shortly. So just to let you know, I have watched that one. As you would expect, obviously this film was Danny Boyle. Danny Boyle came back. I know he did the first one, didn't do the second one. It's very much a return to that feel. I think that's very clear, kind of straight from the off, and as you go through the film, you can kind of feel that as you watch the film as well. It very much focuses on humanity, the human question, which I feel like was so good, so magnetic about the first film. Yeah, it's a zombie apocalypse, but we are asking these questions. What becomes of us? What are we? Do we fall back on our baser nature, or do we rise and find something else? Or rather, do we pull back from modern society and move more towards what we were meant to be here for in the first place? Community, love, and the cycle of life and death. And I think the cycle of life and death is a key part of this film, and something that I will talk about as we kind of get into this review. But first of all, I do just want to talk about the premise of the film itself, 28 years later, and how without actually seeing the film or as you're coming into the film hasn't done much yet. Simply the premise of the film does a lot of groundwork actually to make you intrigued. It's, and as you start to see this, little community that we start with on this island, I remember I was watching and I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is exciting because 28 years, these people are going to be battle hardened, trained. These aren't going to be dumb people wrangling with an apocalypse. They are going to know exactly what to do. And what does that look like, And so, like, I feel like as you come into the film, immediately you start to get intrigued of like, okay, what's this journey going to be? Which kind of had me thinking, what a good idea it is to have it be so far after the first two films. It gives the film license to do something new, something original, which was, as you'll see, was what I wanted so much from the second one. It doesn't quite do that. And to me, it falls flat for that. It doesn't quite find its own originality, its voice. It kind of does, it sets things up, has this foundation, but doesn't quite go there. Whereas the first film very much did have this kind of originality to it, in the sense of it knew what it wanted to do, and got there, right, at the end, and told this kind of beautiful human story, which I feel like 28 years later does the exact same thing. Moving up and down again. The construction of fear is done so well in this film, and very early on. So obviously, we get Spike, his dad, played by Aaron Taylor-Johnson, going out into the wild, onto the mainland. And for the first time, we as the audience get the taste of, okay, what is the dynamic here? And I think we're very much, where the vessel that we inhabit in that is the kid, is Spike, and that fear, and, the kind of, oh God, this is horrific, this is horrible, reflected in the young boy, right? I think because of that, it connects you to Spike as a character, which is brilliant because, as we get further and further into the film, he is the flagship. He is the protagonist. He is who we are going forward with and who the film centers around. So I think, the very quick establishment of the emotional connection with the audience and Spike is so important and so well done, in that kind of embarking onto the mainland, seeing his fear, his shock, and he's seeing it kind of for the first time. He's going out for the first time. He's seeing it for the first time the same way we are. And because of that, that connection is really well established. The construction of fear that I'm talking about is when we first see the infected. By the way, I love the shots and the kind of jittering, jagged effects as, the arrows are going through the infected, and the kind of the almost confusion or panic it strikes in the audience, as well as the sound design to kind of stress you out. Like, I was really stressed. There is also that thing of, the infected, it's sneaking up on Aaron's character. You think he doesn't know, he turns around, he's calm, he gets rid of it, boom. And that's what's so clever about this first encounter with the infected, why I talk about the construction of fear, because this scene is so important for the reveal of the alpha. And dear God, the alpha is terrifying. And by the way, not just because of the demon schlong. I'll be honest with you, it's really hard to transition from saying demon schlong to where I was trying to go. Very scary though. Very scary being. But that's my point. Aaron's so calm. This is a walk in the park, absolutely fine. Establishes that he's very calm, very trained, and, is that thing of 28 years later, okay, they're battle hardened, they know what they're doing. And makes it all the more terrifying when he realizes it's an alpha, and you see, and it really beautifully acted, because you see the fear on his face. Suddenly it's not a game anymore, right? He's having fun. He's having a great time. Not anymore. And the fear that you see in him makes you as the audience go, what the fuck? That's kind of compounded on when you actually see and meet the alpha, this open field. The way that, Aaron's character says to Spike, don't move. You see them kind of coming and, the twitching of the infected, the, very jittery kind of nature of them. And then you have this very still, huge, not just in the schlong department, being in the alpha, and the construction of that moment and the path paved to that, because I think the alpha, and the nighttime shots and everything, injected as a character, as a being with a lot of fear just on his own, but the film and Danny don't settle for that. They do a bit of work to actually enhance that and elevate that fear, and I think really effectively so. Like, for me at least, speaking of myself, it was terrifying. Right, which is only elevated further when we have, the scene when they're running back on the causeway and this guy is just speeding, man. I swear to God. Genuinely terrifying moments, which I think are played and to perfection, and all of that fear is wrung out as much as you possibly can kind of get. All of that is in the build up and the eventual payoff of that causeway run, and I think just a beautiful set piece. And sequence to kind of really instill that fear in you. And also at this point in the film, at this, at the beginning, starting something that I'll talk about a little later in the grand theme of the actual film itself, and this kind of connection that we find and see between the humans and humanity and the infected, how we're not so dissimilar after all, and actually how that is linked to this theme of death, how we perceive it, and the fear that we find and feel in the concept of death, right? And the way that we see the alpha changes as we go through the film, because as we get towards the end, we see another alpha, and we get Ralph Fiennes' his character coming in, pumps him with some morphine, and rendered quite safe, inert. Suddenly, no danger, no fear anymore. And that's something that I'll circle back to, because I think Ralph Fiennes' character for the majority of the film, maybe the first 2/3, represents, at least to my interpretation, this fear that we have of death. What happens when we're talking about the Doctor? It's don't go there, he's insane, no. And, lots of fear coming through. We'll revisit that in a second, because I want to talk about a few other things. First, a little note, but I make a little joke in 28 Weeks Later, the second film, about the color red. Because, by the way, if you were here for the blood vomit, you gotta be a happy customer. Because goddamn. But this idea of film 2, we get code red, it's all bad, it's all going wrong, you see these vials of red blood. And anyway, at a certain point, when Spike and his dad are out and about, they find this red frisbee. I think, red in the franchise of these films is associated very negatively, very instilled with this idea of fear. And it was just a small note, but something that I found really lovely was him brandishing this frisbee, this thing, and it was red, and it is this thing that exists for play and joy and to give happiness to people. I feel like the representation of the color red has always been quite negative, quite, yeah, like I say, quite terrifying. And I feel like that was kind of a ray of light, and flipping that on its head, and the representation of this red frisbee was, I don't know, I saw it and I was like, oh, that's really cool. I like, and maybe it meant nothing and wasn't meant to kind of, be anything, but try to think of something different. Yeah, something this film kind of did really well was flipping a lot of things. I think, like I say, we have this grander theme that only really becomes apparent, I think, towards the end of this kind of life and death, more focally, with the color red as well, of this negativity of terror into joy and play. And also rage, right? Where does that come from? It's obviously, the rage virus, the infected, but what do we see as we go, progress through the film? We see Aaron's character rage-filled. There's a scene, where obviously Spike finds out what he finds out. We have that whole kind of sequence, brandishing of the knife. His dad takes it off him. Before that, he strikes Spike around the face. As he goes down the stairs, he punches the wall. He is this vessel for rage, and becomes very uninviting, right? To the point, and yeah, we have obviously the motivation that Spike has in trying to, get his mum to a doctor, absolutely, but there's very much the springboard effect that is created as a result of this rage in his father, that suddenly this isn't a safe place anymore. And actually, at the end of the film, we have him, Spike going out on his own. Why does he do that? Because suddenly the rage of the infected is more inviting, or at least more of a comfort, than the rage that he finds in his father, which should be this comfort, right? And it's just, like I say, this flipping of rage, how we see it, and it does multiple things, because at the same time as that, it connects, again, us as humanity to the infected. Are we so different, actually? And that's what, I feel like the first film very much tries to explore as well, and to me is something that I think the first film and this film have in common, and like I say, very much a successor, I think, to the first film, as opposed to the second film, which feels very different and wasn't quite in the same vein, I feel like, as this film and the first one. The film kind of drip feeding this idea of the blurring of the line between the infected and humanity. We get this rage, and then as we go out on this journey, and I feel like it's quite poignant that it is a journey, because I feel like it's this journey that we're on in the film, but also as the audience watching the film, of kind of seeing death and the violence and the destruction of this world, the horror, the terror of this world that is, centered around the idea of death, or becoming the infected, and everything ending. It's this journey that we are going on as the audience, to accepting it, as opposed to looking at it with fear. And I talk about it that way because, to come back round to the good old doctor, what was his inclusion in the film up until we meet him is very much, he's insane, don't go there, fear, and he very much represents death, in the sense of, he houses himself in this bone temple, the macabre, surrounds himself with death. He is this kind of vehicle for this theme of death, and up until that point that we meet him, he's terrifying to people, to the point that Aaron, and he tells the story of when they found him all that time ago, they ran the other way. They can't accept it. Us watching the film, we're on this journey to get to a place where actually death isn't the enemy, and we get to this place where death is beautiful. It's to be accepted. And actually, to me, I feel like the triumph of this film is actually when we get to the point where we meet Ralph Fiennes' character, the doctor. He, like I say, renders the alpha inert, harmless, temporarily so, but harmless all the same. And he starts talking about the infected and death, and this connection between, or the similarity, this thing that we share. And I think it's a very human message, it felt like, because we had, just before they arrived at the Bone Temple, this blurring, more so again, of these lines between the infected and humanity, in the infected giving birth. And what is that? It is life, right? They're capable of life. Arrayed against all this death, and the death that we get of Spike's mom in the end is life, and it's this cycle. And something that I found really interesting as well was the shot that's kind of, we meet Eric, and he has this mobile phone, this smartphone. There's this time taken to kind of show the shot of him throwing it away. The film kind of, I feel like, at least to me, it came across as that it going to pains to kind of evoke all of this imagery and all of this feeling of life, death, the core tenets of humanity, what makes us up, right? Community. We have the party, dance, song, love, and then this image of Eric throwing away the phone, and this almost onset of technology and the furthering of humanity away from that, and how actually this apocalypse as we've got it. We open the film with the as they're going across the causeway for the first time, these images of medieval, and it's almost this thing of, before the onset of technology, of the modern world, that's how it was, and that's kind of where we're returning to a certain extent, right? Kind of seemed as if there was that commentary of technology is the evil, modernity in the way that we have it, industry in the way that we had it, was evil, and actually the core tenets of humanity and our life through to our deaths is the important things, and the things that we need to be more focused on, right? Very human, very philosophical, I feel like, in a lot of ways, in ways that I feel like the first film was, but not in the same way as the first film. It was kind of doing its own thing with the time it had. Men go mad with watching them. Like I say, towards the end of the film, as we are with Ralph Fiennes' character, and I feel like his first words of dialogue are quite jovial, quite light, kind of, played in a way that is comedic, and suddenly it kind of saps all of that fear out of his character, right? I feel like everything in his depiction, his character's depiction, how he's played, how he's written, and his representation in the film, what his character's representation in the film is trying to do is going towards this idea of flipping, this idea of the fear of death, and changing it to acceptance. And I think we get that in the scenes that we have with Spike, with his mom, as she goes away, and she's given that autonomy and that choice. And it was very much this thing of her handing the baby to Spike, walking away to die, and this kind of grander scope of a question, or not even a question, but a statement of, we all die, but we will always be born anew. There will always be more of us, and death isn't so scary. It's part of life. And suddenly it's so strange how this bone temple takes on this character of its own, and suddenly it's something beautiful. When, I think, at least for me, in all the trailer material, you kind of start seeing images of it, and you're like, damn, gruesome, macabre, scary, and that couldn't be further from the truth for what the actual film did with that location, did with those scenes, and what it was going for. I think it's just beautiful how Spike, took the skull of his mother, and I say that phrase and that sentence, and that is a very gruesome, almost horror-esque thing to say, to depict, but when you're watching it, it's a very beautiful moment. This kind of catharsis, this kind of ending of a life as the sun rises. And I think the magic of being able to flip that was really beautiful and really, really well done, and meant that at the heart of this very kind of horrific horror story, it was ultimately this beautiful tale and journey of humanity. This kind of tapestry of what we are, but I think what I feel like, Danny and what he was kind of going for was kind of more aiming at saying what we maybe should be, or perhaps what we should be aiming for more so, and how what we're aiming for now in the modern world is slightly askew. All this said and done, beautifully shot film. I always love the feeling of Danny's work. I feel like I haven't seen a great deal, but it always seems very British, very kind of, we have the Angel of the North, these beautiful vistas, beautiful shots, all of the lighting done to perfection, and iteration on what the first film did. I think the alphas were a very simple iteration on the infected, but I think so effective, so terrifying, and something different, something we hadn't seen before, which when I was watching the second film, it was so close to doing, could have done. There was room for that. You know, I talk about it in that video, but ultimately it didn't do that. And I feel like that's what a sequel kind of needs, and something that I think this film did really, really, really well. But yeah, great cast. God, Ralph Fiennes was great. Aaron was great. God, the kid, Alfie, knocked it out of the park, and he had to. You know, the whole film centered around him, and if he didn't, you know, rise to that occasion, it would have fallen a little bit, and it really didn't. It really, you know, he was the backbone, and goddamn, he delivered. You know, Jodie, beautiful. You know, I can see why she was drawn to this kind of role. I think that, you know, even though by the end of it she was gone, I think it was a meaty role. I think there was a lot there to her character. She was very important for the film, and very important, I feel like, for this, you know, like I say, this tale of life and death, and her part in it was integral to landing that as a message, as, you know, the punchline to that theme of the film. Really nice playing around of tone, you know, or like I say, all of that construction of fear, but you have those moments of levity. You have Eric coming in, and he kind of injected the film with a little bit of lightness, a little bit of fun, you know, obviously until his untimely death, bless him. And oh god, and Jack O'Connell making an appearance too. So yeah, no, super excited. I know that this is supposed to be a trilogy. Purportedly Killian is coming back for the next two. I don't know, something that I heard. I don't know if that's been substantiated or whether that's true, but yeah, this film was a really great start to a trilogy. I think it had a story it wanted to tell. It told it from, you know, beginning, middle to end. And I think it makes sense that Spike went out on his own. Like I say, this idea of rage and this journey that he went on meant that he kind of outgrew his little home community and didn't want to go back there because it wasn't comfort anymore. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't warm or homely, and the rage outside, you know, that decision for him to leave was very much, you know, demonstrating this idea of actually this blurring of the line between the infected and humanity, how we're not so dissimilar actually after all, and his decision to kind of go out into that rage-filled countryside and the mainland rather than go home to this rage-filled home and this environment. Really kind of is a gut punch, but very appropriate. And, you know, I think for me, I was wondering, you know, we have that first scene in the kid, the cross, and it's like, who's that going to be? I kind of felt like it was going to be Aaron, and then it wasn't. Then the doctor comes in, it's like, is it going to be him? And then, you know, at the end we get it's Jack O'Connell and that whole thing, but, you know, which was fun and different. And again, iterating, you know, something new in this world, in this franchise. It's 28 years later, right? They can kind of do whatever they want, or it gives them license to do whatever they want, right? You know, be creative, let's do something new. And I think the blonde ninjas at the end was kind of was a great way to do that. This film told its story, and there very much seems like there's more story to tell. So yeah, I think for me, really strong film. But I'm curious. I mean, you know, like I might have forgotten stuff. I don't usually do these types of videos. I I was kind of sitting watching the film, and I was like, I didn't take anything to write notes and whatever. But I was watching and I was like, God damn, this would make a great video. And oh man, I'd be pausing here and pausing, talking about this and this and this and this. And I tried my best on the way back to try and make some notes, but maybe I've forgotten stuff. If I did, or I mean, hey, if you feel like my interpretation of the film, you know, what I took from it was, I don't know, different from yours, please do let me know down below. I am genuinely interested. What do you think? Did you like it in the same way that I did? Did you not? If you liked this video, this kind of content, let me know as well. Like I say, it's something a little bit different to what I usually do. But if you want to see more reviews, reactions, whatever, of, you know, stuff that's in the cinema, well, let me know. Like the video, all that stuff, you know, give it a bit of a push. And please do look out for 28 Weeks Later. There's a lot to talk about with that film. And it's almost a perfect sequel. Or not almost, but it could be. and the foundation's there, and they just don't quite make it for two important reasons. But hey, I'll let the video do its work, so watch out for that. If you're not subscribed, please do that down below. Tick that notification, that bell button, make sure you don't miss it. Keep an eye out. But that's it. That's all I think that I want to say, at least for now. Maybe I'll add something in the comments, and if I remember in the next couple of days or something, I miss something out. But thank you once more. Quick thank you to my patrons, my YouTube members. Genuinely thank you so much for your support. There are some links down in the description for early access to all my videos. I've got a gaming channel down there as well. But like I say, watch out for 28 Weeks Later coming probably tomorrow. But yeah, Slayer Saturday is coming up very soon as well. So yeah, stick around for that. But yeah, until next time, see you later.